with Renee, Tripe Etampes on page 355. We stopped at another outdoor cafe and we ordered and Renee ordered something I was entirely familiar with, but it was delicious with a glass of wine and some small tart-like cookies. We sat there and talked. By now we both understood one another completely, and she was picking up many of my American words. After a second glass of wine, I was feeling enamored, but contained myself to the extent of holding Renee's hand or putting my arm around her. The glance at my watch suggested that we should be getting back, and I asked her if there's anything she wanted to be driven to. As I obtained a taxi, she declined and said that the park would be fine. I left it at that. We reached the park, and the sun had already gone down. It became cool quite suddenly. I put my arm around her waist, and we reached our bed, stated that we had a pleasant time and enjoyed her company. She smiled and squeezed my arm gently and exclaimed that she too had a wonderful time. I then asked her if I could see her tomorrow. Her face saddened a bit, and she stated it would not be possible for the next few days. I was taken aback by her remark, but only said I was disappointed and that I would miss seeing her. She acknowledged by taking my hand and looking directly into my eyes. She whispered softly, perhaps the day after tomorrow, and most definitely the next day. As I encouraged by her remarks, I held both her hands in mine and then reached over and gently kissed her on the cheek, feeling the softness of her skin and tenderness in her eyes. She smiled, held both of my hands tightly for a moment, let go, pursed her lips to throw me a kiss, and then she departed. The next few days were routine at the hospital. I started to have time on my hands. Renee did not make an appearance at the park for several days, and I was beginning to think it was all over for us. I would sit in the park for almost an hour each day, then walk around reaching the cafe we stopped at, but she was nowhere to be seen. On the third day, I almost did not go back to the park, but decided the last moment to give it a try. I arrived there in several minutes when Renee arrived. Once again, everything in the world was right for me. As usual, she was beautiful, and I was so overcome with the joy of seeing her that I hugged her and kissed her fully on the lips. She did not think it was presumptuous of me, and I got the impression that she enjoyed it and would have been disappointed if I had not. She took my hand and stated that she wanted to take me someplace. As we walked hand in hand in the opposite direction we had taken from the first day, I could see that she was excited and exuberant. Her sprightliness was enchanting, and she fairly glowed with sensitivity, with added immeasurably to her charm and gracefulness. She was dressed less stunning than our last meeting, but still was captivating. Her skirt much fuller and longer, and her wool sweater she was wearing still flattered her figure, even though it did not cling to her body. She wore no hat, but her facial gestures were still alluring and tender. Her makeup was almost non-existent, but that did not take away anything from the overall appearance. She wore flat-heeled shoes, which made her appear somewhat shorter than she really was. I still felt that she was a beautiful woman with much poise and elegance. We walked for a while until we came to a quiet street off a main thoroughfare off of St. Michel's. There were no American soldiers about, and nothing to suggest a war was going on only 100 miles away to the east of us. We stopped at a quaint two-story stone and brick structure with several large windows on the second floor from the floor to ceiling, leading to the front door of assortment of hedges and greenery. No doormat because of the winter months. Now dormant because of the winter months. On both sides of the huge oaken door were two large shuttered windows. The shutters were kept swept back to emit more of sun's rays and provide more light inside. Renee stepped at the front door and turned to look at me. It was obvious that she had not done this venture before. She was apprehensive of the new role she had taken. I could see that she was looking for an approval, and I felt that held in a degree of esteem and regard. I smiled approvingly, and she took my hand with a broad smile. She opened the huge door. As we entered, my first impression was the emanation of dampness, which was so prevalent in older stone homes without central heat. After that, a mixture of renderings, I got a whiff of fresh paint, as if someone just got done painting something. A room full of furniture or something. Then there was a familiar odor I knew I had experienced before, but I could not place it. Renee was still holding my hand and took me through the sitting parlor and to one side of the room, which led to the staircase ending at the second floor. As we stood at the landing, the top of the stairs, my eyes took in a large expanse of a room, full of sunlight rushing through and large windows I'd seen outside. Scattered about the room were painting easels and tall stools of every description. On the two windowless walls were paintings of all sizes and descriptions. There were portraits of landscape, animals, buildings, and even some tankers. There were also paintings of Mark IVs, Mark Vs, and I was amazed at the assortment of the quality of the paintings. They were really quite good and displayed much talent. Then it came to me there was a studio, a painter studio, and Renee was the artist. I turned to her, took her hand and murmured, "You did all this?" pointing to as I spoke. She took my other hand and uttered modestly and without ceremony, "Yes, I've been doing this since I was a little girl. This is how I earn my living." I brought her close to me, put her arm around her waist, and we proceeded to walk around the huge room and explain the many paintings to me. I was overwhelmed by her talent and modesty and her penchant for trivialization of her great gift. We stopped before the military paintings, and I was intrigued by the skillful artistry and detailed, lifelike depiction that presented, especially the Tiger tanks and the German soldiers.
Where's that music coming from?
I think it's coming from the theater. You want to take a break a minute?
Huh?
The theater. You want to take a break a minute?
No, go ahead, no.
The theater. The
The
theater.
movie's out yet, huh?
Yeah, there's a movie running.
Oh,
I brought her close to me and put my arm around her. I was overwhelmed by her talent. We stopped before the military paintings, and I was intrigued by the skillful artistry and the lifelike depiction of the present.
a lot of German soldiers up there. German officers painted up there.
A lot of German officers?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they never came to collect their portraits. I'm surprised the German officers didn't take them with them.
Oh, she probably made copies for them.
Oh, okay.
But she was an informer, and they were getting wise to her. She was an informer. And they knew they knew she was milking anything she could get out of her, where their cap, what the instruments are, where their equipment is, what they're going to do. They all knew that, and they said, "That's enough. We had enough."
Okay.
Took her out and shot her.
Yeah. I sure wonder what happened to those portraits.
Portraits?
I wonder what happened to all those portraits.
Well, everything else, if it wasn't taken care of, people go over there and grab everything they can. There's nobody there to monitor the house because she's gone.
Was that just an artist studio, or did she live there too?
What?
Was that an artist studio, or was that her home also?
Her home was on the first floor and the studio was up on the second floor.
And
That was old, three bedrooms. She converted somewhat to a studio.
And you said it smelt of mold?
Huh?
You said it smelt of mold?
The what?
Did you say you smelt the dampness in the building?
Gas?
Dampness. Dampness. Mold.
Oh yeah, dampness from the cellar.
Yeah. All right, let me continue. They surely must have been painting from real life. I thought to get too much detail into them. I turned to Renee and nodded with my approval. She was pleased at my assessment and stayed close to me as we completed the circuit around the room. She led to a staircase and descended to the first floor and into the kitchen of the rear house. It was a large kitchen with a huge cast iron wood-burning stove, glowing, giving off warm, comfortable sensation. There was a small wooden table scrubbed to its bleached grain and several wooden chairs of the same hue. The floor was covered with flat stones laid in a mortar, and around the perimeter of the room were red bricks, forming a ledge also into the mortar. On the stove was a large black iron pot, boiling away, emitting much vapor and aroma. I turned to Renee and blurted out one word, tripe, pointing to the boiling pot. So is that how you cook tripe? You boil it?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, then they fry it. They put stuff in, onions, peppers, tomatoes.
But Renee was boiling the tripe.
Yeah.
How did your mother cook the tripe?
How'd her mother cook it?
How'd your mother cook it?
My mother cooked it in a pot, steel pot. And she put a lot of stuff in it.
Did she serve it to you often?
Huh?
Did she serve it to you often?
No, not too much, no.
You weren't that fond of it, were you?
Huh?
You weren't that fond of it, were you?
Well, you got to get used to it. Once or twice I had, and that was enough.
Did your mother make you Brussels sprouts
Yeah.
on a regular basis?
My mother was a good cook.
What was your favorite dish that your mother
Favorite dish
cooked?
was probably spaghetti and meatballs. Oh, stuffed cabbage.
She did a good job.
Stuffed cabbage, yeah.
Didn't your brothers come over for a Sunday dinner?
Yeah,
And they liked everything also, right?
yeah. Sunday was a ritual for dinner, yeah. The family get together, sit around the big table in the dining room.
Yeah,
My mother and whoever wanted to help would help.
yeah. Still running? Okay, I'll keep on reading. A big pot was boiling. A huge cast iron wood burning stove. The floor was covered. On the stove was a black iron pot, boiling away. I turned to Renee and blurted out one word, tripe, pointing to the boiling pot. She let out a shriek of surprise, and we both laughed. This was the smell that I recognized when we first entered the house, but I could not relate to it. So you knew when you first entered the house, there was an unusual smell, but you couldn't place it.
Yeah, well,
It came from when your mother made you tripe,
Yeah,
and then it all came together.
yeah.
My mother frequently made tripe soup, and I recalled the distinct odor it gave as it boiled away. I explained this to Renee as she grasped more of what I was saying. She got more excited and pleased with my familiar with tripe soup. She began to set the table with large earthen bowls along the large soup spoons and brought onto the table a basket of laden French bread, which smelled fresh and delicious. The last item she placed on the edge of the bowls were cloth napkins.
Hang on.
There, I gotta go pee.
Okay, shut it down.